When Dr. Carter looked at me, his eyes softened visibly. I knew right then something worse than the pain gnawing at my chest for the past 3 months was coming. Ella, you have stage 3 breast cancer. Hearing those words felt like the ceiling had collapsed on my head. Everything blurred after that. The low hum of the AC, the harsh light of the exam room, and his voice, still explaining treatment plans, chemotherapy, survival rates. I didn't ask questions. I didn't cry. I just nodded as if I still had control over something, even though I was free-falling inside. I was 27, a freelance graphic designer living with my boyfriend Jason, in a small apartment in Seattle. We'd been together for over 4 years. We'd weathered the hardest days starting our careers, dreamed of building our own studio. He was the first person I called after leaving the clinic. His voice cracked when I told him the news, but he said one sentence: "I'll be here, no matter what." And I believed him. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on the bathroom floor clutching the toilet like it was the only thing holding me together. The second round of chemo had wrecked my body. I'd never known exhaustion could make you feel so foreign in your own skin. My hands were trembling, teeth chattering, stomach revolting without mercy. I heard footsteps down the hall. Jason. I thought he was bringing me a cold towel, or at the very least, that he'd sit next to me like last time. But when the door opened, his voice sounded so unfamiliar I needed a moment to recognize it. I can't do this anymore." Before I could lift my head, he continued, each word clear, firm. "I thought I could handle it, but I can't. All of this, it's too much for me." I gripped the rim of the toilet, trying to stay calm. This meaning what, that I'm going through cancer treatment? He didn't answer. He looked at me like I was a burden he had accidentally picked up and now regretted carrying. Then he spoke again, as casually as canceling a gym subscription. "I called your sister. Emily is coming from Oregon tonight. She'll take care of you instead of me." I looked up. My eyes were red, tears and sweat running down my cheeks. "You talked to my sister before saying goodbye to me?" Jason turned away. I could see the cowardice in the way he avoided my eyes. I didn't know how to say it. I let out a laugh, harsh and dry, like metal hitting stone. "Well, congratulations, you found a way." He placed the house key on the kitchen counter. The clink of metal against marble was colder than the first winter night we ever shared under the same roof. "I'll have someone pick up the rest of my stuff later. I just need space to think." I had no energy left to be angry. Chemo had taken it all. My hair, my strength, my clarity, and now, even my ability to fight back. I just whispered, "Oh then." He paused in the doorway. I knew he was waiting for me to beg him to stay, but I had nothing left to hold anyone back. When the door finally closed, I dragged my body to the bed. The bed that used to feel safe now smelled like antiseptic and emptiness. I cried, not because of him, but because of myself. A woman slowly fading, both physically and emotionally. 3 days after Jason left the apartment, I saw him pop up on social media, smiling, arm around a woman in a red dress, sitting next to a glass of wine on a familiar rooftop bar. I had to reread the username to believe it. Lindsay_Parker. Jason's former coworker at the investment firm, the one who used to smile politely at me during office parties and ask about my mom's health with fake concern. I stared at that photo until my phone screen dimmed on its own. The timestamp was from the night he left my home, not 3 weeks later, not even a month. That same night, while I was still clinging to the pillow he left behind, waiting for a text or a decent explanation. Not a hint of shame. I couldn't tell what hurt more, the disease eating away at my body, or the realization that the person I trusted most had tossed me aside like expired milk. That evening, Emily, my sister, arrived. She stepped into the apartment with a bag of warm food, eyes full of both anger and worry. "Have you eaten anything? I brought chicken soup and some toasted bread." I shook my head. She set the bag down, sat beside me and asked gently, "Jason called me, a few days ago. Said you needed someone to take care of you." My voice came out rough. He didn't want to stay anymore. Emily didn't respond right away. After a long moment, she squeezed my hand. "I know about Lindsay." I turned to her, surprised. "You do? A friend of mine works in the same building, saw them having lunch together since March. I exhaled, chest heavy. March? Almost 6 months before my diagnosis. The chill running down my spine didn't come from chemo. It came from knowing I'd been betrayed long before I realized I was in love. Alone. Emily looked at me, hesitant. Are you sure they started after you got sick? I didn't answer. Deep down, the answer was already painfully clear. 2 days later, while I was resting, the doorbell rang. It was Judith, Jason's mother. I hadn't expected her to come. I'd always had a soft spot for her. During the years Jason and I were together, she'd often texted me to check in, sent gifts on holidays, and never treated me with anything less than warmth. That day she showed up in a light gray cardigan, holding a pale bouquet of hydrangeas in her arms. May I come in? I nodded, stepping aside. She placed the flowers on the table, sat down, and looked at me for a long moment. It wasn't pity. It was something far more conflicted. Jason was wrong. Deeply wrong. I didn't know how to respond, so I stayed quiet. She pulled out a small envelope and slid it toward me. This is the money I had saved for his wedding. I don't want Lindsay wearing a dress paid for with this. If you need help, use it to do something good for yourself. I was speechless. Before I could react, she stood up. I can't change my son, but I can choose to stand on the side of what's right. The following evening, I got a message from an old friend, Melanie, who went to college with Jason and now works at a financial firm in Denver. Ella, I've tried to stay quiet, but after hearing that Jason left you in the middle of treatment, I can't keep this to myself anymore. Lindsay wasn't a new thing. They went on a work trip together back in February, and I heard Jason say it himself, that your illness was the perfect excuse to walk away without being hated. That last sentence made my blood run cold. Jason had used my cancer as the perfect cover to leave. Not only did he betray me, he timed his exit to make himself look respectable. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part just felt hollow. I stared at the phone screen. The name Jason Miller now felt like a joke, a humiliation. I don't know exactly when my body started to fight back against the disease, but I remember the moment I stopped lying on the bathroom floor. It was an early morning in December. Sunlight slipped through the blinds of my dim apartment and hit the armchair I used to sit in during infusions. I sat upright, wrapped in a thick sweater, and made myself a cup of peppermint tea. The warmth slid down my throat. Not pleasant, but no longer painful. 8 months of treatment meant 8 months of learning to accept myself all over again. My body changed daily. Hair fell out completely, then slowly returned as fine, naturally curly strands. My skin darkened from medication. My nails turned brittle and discolored. But during those 8 months, I realized I needed a map, not just to survive, but to exist again as a full person. I wrote down 3 goals, not grand but necessary. Rebuild my body. Regain financial independence. Find a place that belongs to me. I reached out to Nora, a post-cancer recovery coach that Emily had found through a health forum. Nora was a short, strong black woman who spoke with directness and refused to use hollow encouragement. Your body's been through war. We're not sprinting, we're rebuilding. Got it? I nodded. And I started with the simplest things: slow walks in the park, lifting 1-pound dumbbells, learning to breathe properly. Some days I couldn't last 10 minutes without feeling dizzy. Other days I'd stand in front of the mirror and cry because I saw muscle definition on my arm, a feature I thought would never return. Nora didn't praise me. She just placed a hand on my shoulder. See, your body never gave up. It was just waiting for you to come back. Before getting sick, I had freelanced with several publishing houses in Seattle, mostly editing children's books. As my health stabilized, I sent an email to Maggie, a senior editor I had worked with before. I can't work full-time, but I need projects, remote, flexible hours. She replied the same day. Send a sample review if you're ready. I'm drowning in submissions. I opened my laptop and spent 3 hours writing the first manuscript evaluation, long, detailed, careful, as if I were the author. Not to impress anyone, but because my brain felt alive again. From then on, I had steady assignments each week. It wasn't much money, but enough that I no longer relied on the last of my savings post-treatment. The apartment Jason and I once shared, though he had long since disappeared, still held traces of him. The reading lamp he chose. The beige curtains I never liked, but he insisted looked clean. I didn't want to live in a monument to the past. I listed the apartment through a soft-spoken agent named Kevin, who never asked, "Why are you selling?" He simply said, "What do you need? I'll make it happen." 2 weeks later, a young couple came to see the place. Recently engaged, their eyes full of the kind of light I once carried. I agreed to sell immediately, no negotiations, no hesitation. After taxes and paying off medical debt, I found a small apartment in the northern part of Capitol Hill. An old neighborhood filled with stone stairways, cafes that played jazz on weekend mornings, and rows of red maples glowing in the fall. The apartment had only one bedroom, the window faced the main road. The hardwood floor was old, but the morning sunlight was enough to warm up the whole space. I hung a single painting on the wall, a phoenix rising from ashes, a belated birthday gift Emily brought during a visit in late spring. "You don't need to fly high, Ella," she had said. "Just know you're strong enough not to fall again." That night, I sat by the window, holding a mug of ginger tea, watching the car lights smear across the pavement. No Jason, no Lindsay, no memories clinging to me like poisonous root. I hadn't reached out to him right away. I hesitated for nearly 3 weeks after moving to Capitol Hill, but his name kept circling in my mind like a door latch not quite locked. Daniel Hart. Daniel had been Jason's college friend. Same sophomore finance class, same running club, same internship at their first company. But at some point during senior year they'd cut ties. Jason simply said, "He's not trustworthy anymore." I never asked further. Until I randomly saw Daniel's name pop up under a public post about Lindsay on social media. A glamorous shot from a vacation in Mexico where she flaunted "the most alive year of my life." In the photo, Jason stood behind her, hand on her shoulder, wearing that unmistakable smile. Smug, arrogant, utterly heartless. I sent Daniel a short message. I didn't expect much. "Daniel, this is Ella, Jason's ex. I know you were close once. There are some things only you can help me understand." He replied in less than 2 hours. "I remember you, and honestly, I've been hoping you'd reach out." We met at a small cafe near our old college campus, the same place I used to wait for Jason after class. Daniel arrived on time, wearing a gray button-down, hair neatly cut, his face serious like he'd been waiting for this conversation for years. "Jason lied about a lot, Ella," he said, "but what he did to you, I didn't realize it was that bad." I looked him straight in the eye. "I didn't come for sympathy. I want the truth. Why did you cut ties with him?" Daniel took a deep breath and set his coffee cup down. "Last February, Jason used my name to initial a financial report. I only found out when audit called to confirm something directly. When I confronted him, he just shrugged and said, 'It's just paperwork, no one pays attention.'" "You mean forgery?" "You got it. And it wasn't a one-time thing. I looked back and found at least 4 other incidents. I filed an internal report. And Jason, just like you might guess, flipped the narrative, made me out to be some jealous loser." "Do you have proof?" Daniel nodded. "I kept scans of the edited files, and a few others suspect something too, but they're afraid to speak up." I held his gaze and said clearly, "I want to meet them, every single one." 2 weeks later I had 3 names, 3 women working in different departments at the same company as Jason. They weren't victims of emotional manipulation. They were victims of workplace coercion, pushed to look the other way or excluded from key projects whenever they spoke up. We met at a small bar in Tacoma. All 3 agreed to share what they knew, on the condition that I wouldn't reveal their names. They showed me internal emails with suspicious fund transfers from temporary investment accounts to event organization costs, while Jason and Lindsay were on vacation. One of them had even saved hotel booking receipts, charged the company card, Jason's name printed clearly. "We know everything, Ella, but he has a way of making people believe he's untouchable." I thanked them and stood. Outside, a cold breeze from the harbor brushed across my face. I tightened my scarf. In my hands now wasn't just frustration. It was truth. Confirmed, documented, and witnessed. Back home, I opened my laptop. For a brief moment I hesitated. Was I taking things too far? But then I remembered the look in Jason's eyes when he walked out. Cold and final. I remembered what his friend said. He thinks your illness gave him the perfect out while keeping his image intact. I opened the file folder, saved everything onto a new USB drive and labeled it Reckoning. Then I opened the drawer and pulled out a wooden box. Inside was a silver phoenix pendant, Emily's gift the day I finished my last round of chemotherapy. I clasped it around my neck and looked in the mirror. I wasn't the woman waiting to be pitied anymore. I received the wedding invitation on a March afternoon. It wasn't addressed directly to me but forwarded by Hannah, a college friend. The subject line read, Jason and Lindsay love story begins here. I clicked it open, expecting nothing. But the first line froze my blood. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Jason Miller and Lindsay Parker at the Astoria Edge Hotel, Lakeview, where our love story began under the first sunset. Astoria Edge. The same venue Jason had once booked for our wedding. I remembered every detail. I had picked the tablecloths, the chairs, even the acoustic band. I kept the invoice for 3 months, thinking I might want to change the flower arrangement one day. Turns out, that invoice could still be useful, but for a very different reason. I sat in silence for a long time, then I picked up the phone and called Emily. She answered before the first ring ended. You saw it? They can invite anyone they want, just not me, I said softly. But they forgot one thing, nothing stays hidden on the internet. Ella, what are you going to do? I tightened my grip on the phoenix pendant. I need exactly 6 weeks, and a dress. I met with Callie Tran, a Vietnamese-American designer known for making gowns for cancer survivors. Her designs didn't hide scars, they turned them into the heart of the dress. Callie listened to my story, her expression calm like someone who had seen more pain than most. What kind of dress do you want? One that speaks for me. I'm not going to give a speech, I'm not going to cry or scream, I just want to walk in and let them figure it out. Callie nodded. She started sketching immediately. An emerald green gown with a low back, a fitted waist. Not tight, just enough to highlight the new shape of my body. Not flawless, but powerful. The color of rebirth, she said. Spring after the longest winter. I stared at the sketch. It was a soft suit of armor for my resurrection. After approving the design, I booked a room at Astoria Edge, 1 floor above the wedding hall. I needed to be in the heart of it. I asked Emily for help, hire a makeup artist, secure the perfect earrings, prep a small clutch just big enough for the USB containing all the evidence. Transaction records, timelines, and 3 witness testimonies. Everything arranged like an elegant indictment. A week before the wedding, I called Daniel. I'm doing this, are you sure you want to stand beside me? His voice was quiet but firm. Ella, I stayed silent while Jason hurt others, not this time. I didn't say thank you, we knew each other better than that. The night before the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel room. My hair had grown to chin length, curling softly at the ends. The first time, I could touch my head without fearing pain. I wore the phoenix necklace, clipped on a pair of small quartz earrings, my mother's gift from Arizona before she passed. On my left wrist I tied a green ribbon. No one else would understand its meaning, only me. I looked at myself one last time. I was no longer the woman left alone in a bathroom, with a rotting body and a shattered heart. The Astoria Edge Hotel glittered that night like a gemstone by Lakeview. I stepped out of the elevator on the 3rd floor, pausing briefly in front of the grand wooden doors, leading to the ballroom. Music drifted from inside. Soft violin strings, the clink of glasses, and laughter I once believed would be mine. I walked in. The heels of my shoes struck the marble floor, each step echoing steadily. No one said a word, but I could feel every turned head, every glance that landed, lingered, and slowly widened. No one recognized me right away. My hair was short now, my skin healthy, my shoulders straighter than ever. I was no longer the frail woman on a hospital bed they had heard Jason mention with carefully rehearsed pity. Across the room I saw Jason. His perfectly tailored tux couldn't hide the panic in his eyes the moment he recognized me. He froze. Next to him, Lindsay was smiling at an older guest, but within seconds she turned too. Her smile froze. I walked straight to the center of the grand hall. The crowd parted like an invisible door swinging open before me. Jason Miller. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Enough to silence the entire room. I think you forgot to invite someone. He stepped toward me, trying to appear calm. His eyes darted around, toward the business partners, clients, and board members of his company, all gathered for this polished affair. Ella, this isn't the place. Not the place? I cut in. Then where would be the place for me to ask why you walked out of our apartment without looking back, 3 days after my second round of chemo? The air turned glacial. Lindsay instinctively reached for Jason, but I pulled a small USB from my coat pocket and raised it to eye level. Or why you used your company card to book hotel rooms for trips with her while I was fighting through morphine doses? A wave of murmurs rippled through the room like wind over water. Jason stepped closer, his voice lowered. You're blowing this out of proportion. I gave a thin smile. No, I'm setting the record straight. You embezzled over $100,000 from temporary investment accounts over the past year. The proof is here, along with statements from 3 of your direct reports. A silver-haired man standing nearby, Bernard, a board member at Jason's company, stepped forward. Is this serious? I didn't answer him. Instead, I turned. Daniel? The large rear doors swung open. Daniel Hart entered, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit, looking like he had just stepped out of a courtroom. In his hand was a leather briefcase. Sorry for the delay, he said, turning to Bernard. I represent the whistleblower. This is the preliminary case file. You're welcome to verify everything. Jason's face drained of color. Lindsay stepped back, whispering something I didn't bother to interpret. I turned to him one last time. You thought I'd die, or be too weak to do anything, but no, Jason. I lived. I remembered, and I documented every step you took, so today, there's nothing left for you to deny. Jason stammered. You're ruining my life. No. I'm restoring balance. You ruined your own life. I walked out of the ballroom in utter silence. No one stopped me. No one dared speak. Behind me, I could sense the phones rising. The people who once smiled at Jason now whispered behind his back. I didn't turn around. In the hallway, Emily was waiting with a coat and the pair of flats I had asked her to bring. I stepped down the front steps on my own 2 feet. Not a victim. Not someone left behind. Just me. Ella walking out of the past with my head held high. The news broke just 3 days after the wedding. The Seattle Ledger ran a front-page article. Young investment director suspended amid embezzlement probe. Jason's face was unmistakable, not from some glossy conference shot, but a paparazzi photo of him leaving company headquarters, looking pale and disheveled, tie dangling like it had just been yanked from a noose. 4 weeks later, Jason was officially suspended. The internal audit had turned into a federal investigation. The amount uncovered wasn't just small sums tucked away. It was $2 million. Siphoned through temporary disbursement accounts, routed through a shell company in Nevada, and re-entered as strategic media expenses. Once the authorities stepped in, everything moved faster than I expected. An insider cooperated, confirming the documents I had sent anonymously. Jason was arrested at the luxury apartment he had bought with Lindsay on a Monday morning. No one came to defend him. He exited in sweatpants, hands cuffed, head down. 3 months later, at the first hearing, Jason pled guilty. No flashy attorneys, no complex arguments. The judge handed down the sentence. 18 months in federal custody, full restitution of stolen funds, and additional civil damages. When the verdict was announced, I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop on Pine Street reading Daniel's message. I read it over and over. It's done, Ella. Everything was made clear in court. I closed my phone and looked up at the sunlight spilling across the pavement. There were no cheers in my head, no victory horns. Just silence. And this time the silence wasn't scary. As for Lindsay, she vanished from the finance world just 1 week after Jason's arrest. Every social media account, gone. LinkedIn profile, wiped. Her former office issued a short statement. Ms. Lindsay Parker has resigned for personal reasons. Rumors swirled that she'd moved back to live with family in Colorado. Some said she was trying to apply to law school again. I didn't care. People who choose to walk into the dark alongside liars will eventually have to learn to live in it. One early spring afternoon, just as the cherry blossoms bloomed in Volunteer Park, I got a call from an unknown number. I nearly didn't pick up, but something in the ring made me pause. Ella, it's me, Judith. I froze. Judith Miller, Jason's mother. She had once been the woman I thought would become my mother-in-law, the one who gave me a hand-embroidered handkerchief at our engagement party and said, "I've been saving this for someone truly worthy." Now her voice was raspy on the line. "I'm not calling to defend anyone, I just wanted to say, what you did wasn't out of hatred. It was for justice, I know that. I used to think Jason was the strong one, but it turns out you were the one who stayed standing through the storm." There was a long pause. Then, quietly, "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but thank you for not letting the truth stay buried." I answered softly. "Thank you for calling." That summer, Seattle felt warmer than usual. The tree-lined streets I'd walked so many times cast softer shadows now, like the world itself had shifted slightly, because I had changed how I saw it. Daniel Hart and I didn't label anything. No rush, no pressure. Just Saturday coffees, weekend dog walks, and shared silence in small bookstores where I could quietly leave the past behind. Daniel understood me in a way no one ever had. He never asked, "Are you okay?" He only asked, "Do you want to talk today?" And sometimes his silence was the kindest answer. One July afternoon we sat on the stone steps at Gasworks Park, watching the lake shimmer gold in the late sun. I had just submitted the final draft to an independent publisher, of a book I never thought I'd have the courage to write, Among the Ashes. It wasn't a tell-all, not a revenge story, just a whisper to anyone who'd ever been left behind. That they weren't alone. Daniel handed me a cup of peach iced tea and said, "I didn't know you wrote like that. I read the excerpt. It's beautiful and brave." I smiled, staring out at the water. Honestly, the bravest part wasn't writing it, it was letting myself live again. A month later, the book was released. No big launch, no marketing campaign, just quiet reviews on small blogs, thoughtful messages in the reader mail section, and one message from a woman named Claire, 48, in Ohio. "Ori, your story made me stop just in time. My husband left during my first round of treatment. I thought I wasn't strong enough to go on, but now, I think I'll try." One early fall morning I received a pale yellow envelope with no return address. The postmark was from a federal correctional facility in Oregon. I knew exactly who it was from. Inside was a handwritten letter, prison stationery, the handwriting still familiar but shakier now. The tone was neither defensive nor blaming. It was Jason. No empty apology, no plea for forgiveness, just a raw confession. I always chased admiration and power, like if I had enough of it, I wouldn't feel hollow. But it was all a shell. Until I saw you walk into that wedding hall. I had never seen you so clearly. Strong, quiet, and no longer a part of me. I don't have the right to call you anything anymore, but I hope you've found yourself. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside my bed, not because I still cared, but because I needed to remember. Even the person who hurt me most couldn't deny who I had become. On my 28th birthday, Daniel and I hiked to the top of Rattlesnake Ledge, where you can see the whole valley spread out below, the wind sweeping through pine branches. We brought sandwiches, water, and a small blanket. Daniel sat beside me and asked, "What are you thinking?" I tilted my head. The sunlight caught on the phoenix pendant still hanging around my neck, not to remind me of revenge, but to mark the journey of rising again. "I'm thinking, I don't need anything more to feel whole." Daniel smiled but said nothing. We sat like that for a long time. No need to go forward. No need to look back. Just the two of us and ourselves. Enough. My story isn't about revenge. It's about finding my way back to myself. I lost almost everything, my health, my trust, and someone I once loved deeply. But from those ashes I learned how to rise. Not to prove anything to anyone, but to live a life no longer defined by pain. If you're in the middle of a storm, believe this: you are not invisible. And rebirth begins the moment you choose to take even one small step forward. What do you think about Ella's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories about love, family, and resilience.